Act as if everything is always working out for you, not because the world has proven it yet, but because you have decided it is so. There is a quiet power in assumption. The moment you accept, deeply and without resistance, that life is unfolding in your favor, something within you shifts. You begin to move differently. You think differently. You no longer react from fear or doubt, but from a calm certainty that every event, every delay, every unexpected turn is part of a greater alignment. To act as if is not to pretend or deceive yourself. It is to choose your inner state with intention. It is to feel the relief before the solution appears, to carry the confidence before the evidence arrives, and to embody the outcome before it takes form in the outer world. When you truly live in this assumption, obstacles lose their power. What once seemed like setbacks begin to reveal themselves as redirections. What once caused anxiety now feels temporary, even necessary. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead, "No, this is happening for me." Your inner world becomes the blueprint. And as you consistently return to the feeling that everything is working out, reality begins to mirror that conviction in ways both subtle and undeniable. So walk as though the path is already clear. Speak as though the answer has already been given. Feel as though the outcome has already been secured. Because in the end, the life you experience is not shaped by chance. It is shaped by the state you choose to live in. And if you choose the state where everything works out for you, then, in ways you may not yet see, it will. Assumption shapes your reality in ways so subtle that most people overlook it, yet so powerful that it governs the very fabric of your experience. Every moment of your life is filtered through what you quietly accept to be true. Long before anything appears in your outer world, it has already taken form within you as a belief, a feeling, an expectation. You are not merely reacting to life as it happens. You are, in a deeper sense, participating in its unfolding through what you assume. Consider how effortlessly you accept certain things about yourself and your life. Perhaps you believe that opportunities come easily to you, or perhaps you have accepted that things are always difficult. These are not just passing thoughts. They are states you live in, and whatever state you occupy consistently begins to project itself outward, shaping your circumstances in ways that feel natural, almost inevitable. When you assume something to be true, you do not constantly question it. You do not seek proof at every step. You move with it, think from it, and feel through it. This quiet acceptance becomes the foundation of your perception. It influences how you interpret events, how you respond to challenges, and even what you notice or ignore in your environment. In this way, your assumption acts like a lens, coloring everything you see. If you assume that everything works out for you, you begin to approach life differently. You no longer hesitate with the same doubt or brace yourself for disappointment. Instead, there is a natural ease in your actions, a sense of inner stability that does not depend on immediate results. You make decisions with greater clarity because you are not burdened by the fear of failure. You trust the process, even when the outcome is not yet visible. On the other hand, if you assume that things rarely go your way, that belief quietly directs your thoughts and behaviors. You may second-guess opportunities, withdraw from risks, or interpret neutral situations as negative. Over time, these patterns reinforce the very reality you expect. Not because the world is fixed against you, but because your assumption has guided your participation in it. This is why the inner world holds such importance. It is not separate from reality. It is the origin of it. Every external experience has its roots in an internal state. What you repeatedly accept as true becomes familiar, and what is familiar feels real. From this place, your outer world begins to mirror your inner convictions, not instantly or magically, but through a steady alignment of thoughts, feelings, and actions. To understand this is to recognize your role as more than a passive observer of life. You are not at the mercy of random events, nor are you limited to reacting to circumstances as they arise. You have the ability to choose your assumptions, to decide what you will accept as true about yourself and your life. This choice, though invisible, carries immense influence. Changing an assumption does not require force or struggle. It begins with awareness. You notice the beliefs you have been holding, especially the ones that operate quietly in the background. Then you gently introduce a new assumption, one that aligns with the life you wish to experience. At first, it may feel unfamiliar, even uncertain. But as you return to it repeatedly, it begins to take root. With time, this new assumption becomes natural. It shapes your thoughts without effort, influences your emotions without resistance, and guides your actions without hesitation. What once felt like a deliberate practice becomes a way of being. And as your inner state stabilizes in this new direction, your outer experiences begin to reflect it. This process does not mean that every moment will appear perfect, or that challenges will disappear entirely. Rather, it changes your relationship with those moments. When your assumption is that everything works out for you, even difficulties are seen through a different lens. They lose their power to define your experience, and instead become part of a larger unfolding that ultimately leads in your favor. In this way, assumption is not about controlling every detail of life, but about choosing the state from which you live. It is about deciding, at a fundamental level, what you accept to be true. And from that decision, everything else begins to follow. To act as if everything is working in your favor is not an exercise in pretense, nor is it an attempt to deceive yourself into ignoring reality. It is a deliberate shift into a state of being where the desired outcome feels natural, familiar, and already accepted within you. There is a profound difference between forcing a smile while doubt lingers beneath the surface and genuinely entering the feeling of confidence, relief, and certainty. One is fragile and easily shaken. The other is steady, quiet, and deeply rooted. When you truly embody a feeling, it does not require constant effort to maintain it. It begins to carry you. Just as a person who is confident does not need to repeatedly remind themselves to act confident, you too can reach a point where the feeling of assurance becomes your default state. This is what it means to act as if, not to imitate a version of yourself you think you should be, but to become inwardly aligned with the version of yourself who already experiences the outcome you desire. Think of how naturally you feel certain about things you already accept as true. You do not question whether the sun will rise or whether your name belongs to you. There is no inner argument, no need for evidence in each moment. The feeling is settled. Acting as if invites you to bring that same quality of certainty into areas where you once felt unsure. It asks you to move from hoping and wishing into knowing and accepting. This shift begins in the inner world, where feelings are formed before they are expressed. Instead of waiting for external proof to grant you relief or confidence, you allow yourself to experience those emotions now. You permit yourself to feel the ease of a problem already solved, the calm of a path already cleared, the quiet satisfaction of an outcome already secured. These are not imaginary in the sense of being false. They are previews of a state you are choosing to occupy. When you embody this feeling, your actions begin to reflect it without conscious effort. You speak with more clarity because you are not second-guessing yourself. You make decisions with greater trust because you are not paralyzed by uncertainty. Even your posture, your tone, and your presence begin to shift. Others may not immediately understand the source of this change, but they can sense it. It is the difference between someone who is waiting for permission from the world and someone who has already granted it to themselves. Pretending, on the other hand, carries tension. It feels like holding something in place that could collapse at any moment. There is a constant awareness of the gap between what you are showing and what you actually feel. This gap creates resistance, and resistance weakens the very state you are trying to maintain. True embodiment removes this strain because it closes that gap. You are no longer trying to appear confident. You are resting in confidence. It is important to understand that this does not mean ignoring your current circumstances or denying what is happening around you. Rather, it means choosing not to let those circumstances dictate your inner state. You acknowledge what is present, but you do not give it the authority to define your experience. Instead, you return, again and again, to the feeling you have chosen, until it becomes more real to you than the temporary conditions you observe. There may be moments when doubt arises, when old patterns of thinking attempt to reclaim your attention. This is natural. What matters is not the absence of doubt, but your response to it. Each time you gently redirect yourself back to the feeling of certainty, you strengthen it. Each time you choose relief over worry, you reinforce a new way of being. Over time, this repetition builds a foundation that becomes increasingly stable. As this inner state solidifies, something begins to shift in your experience of the world. Situations that once triggered anxiety no longer hold the same power. You find yourself navigating challenges with a sense of calm that surprises even you. Opportunities appear more accessible. not because they suddenly came into existence, but because you are now able to recognize and receive them. Your outer world begins to reflect the composure and assurance you have cultivated within, acting as if, in its truest sense, is an act of acceptance. It is the willingness to claim a state before it is confirmed by external evidence. It is the quiet decision to feel now what you once believed you had to wait for. And in doing so, you remove the distance between where you are and where you wish to be, not by forcing reality to change, but by changing the place within you from which reality is experienced. Your inner state quietly governs the way you meet every moment. Long before you speak, decide, or act, there is already a response forming within you, shaped by what you have accepted as true. This inner condition becomes the ground from which all reactions rise. It is not the outer event itself that determines how you feel, but the state you are in when you encounter it. Two people can face the same situation and experience it entirely differently. One may feel overwhelmed, tense, and uncertain, while the other remains composed, steady, and clear. The difference does not lie in the event, but in the inner position from which each person responds. When you assume that things are working out for you, you begin to approach life from a place of quiet confidence. This confidence does not need constant reassurance, because it is rooted within, not dependent on changing circumstances. When uncertainty appears, as it inevitably does, your reaction reveals the state you occupy. If your assumption is grounded in doubt, even small disruptions can feel threatening. The mind begins to anticipate negative outcomes, and the body responds with tension. You may rush decisions, overanalyze details, or withdraw entirely. In this way, fear is not simply a reaction to the situation. It is the expression of an inner belief that something is not right, that things may fall apart. But when your assumption is that everything is unfolding in your favor, uncertainty loses its intensity. You still recognize that you do not have all the answers, yet you are not unsettled by it. There is a sense of allowance, a willingness to let events develop without forcing immediate conclusions. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause. Instead of fearing the unknown, you remain open to it. This calmness is not passive. It is a form of strength that allows you to respond with clarity rather than confusion. This shift in reaction begins with a simple but powerful decision: to choose the state from which you will engage with life. When you consistently return to the assumption that things are working out, you begin to train your mind and body to respond accordingly. What once triggered stress gradually loses its hold. Situations that used to provoke worry now feel manageable, even neutral. Over time, calmness becomes your natural response, rather than something you have to consciously create. Your reactions, in turn, influence your experiences. When you respond with fear, your perspective narrows. You focus on potential problems, overlook opportunities, and often reinforce the very outcomes you wish to avoid. Fear-driven reactions tend to create more friction, more resistance, and more uncertainty. On the other hand, when you respond with calmness, your awareness expands. You are able to see options more clearly, think more rationally, and act more effectively. Calmness allows space for better decisions, and better decisions lead to more favorable outcomes. This does not mean that you will never feel moments of doubt or concern. These feelings may arise, especially when you are faced with unfamiliar or challenging situations. What changes is your relationship with them. Instead of being carried away by them, you observe them. You recognize that they are temporary and do not define your state. Then, gently and deliberately, you return to the assumption you have chosen, that things are working out for you. As you practice this, your inner state becomes more stable. It is no longer easily shaken by external events. You begin to trust your ability to remain steady, even when circumstances are unclear. This trust builds over time, reinforced by each moment you choose calmness over fear. Gradually, you find that you are not reacting to life as much as you are responding to it with intention. In this way, your inner state becomes a source of guidance. It shapes not only how you feel, but also how you move through the world. It influences the tone of your conversations, the quality of your decisions, and the direction of your actions. And as this inner calmness becomes more consistent, it begins to reflect outward, creating an experience that aligns with the very assumption you have embraced. Challenges, when viewed from a limited perspective, often appear as interruptions, unwelcome obstacles that stand between you and what you desire. They seem to delay progress, create discomfort, and introduce uncertainty into what you wish could be a smooth and predictable path. Yet this interpretation is not fixed. It is shaped by the meaning you assign to these moments. When your inner assumption shifts, so too does the role that challenges play in your experience. When you begin to accept that everything is working out for you, even the presence of difficulty takes on a different quality. What once felt like resistance now feels like movement, though not always in the direction you expected. Instead of asking why something has gone wrong, you begin to sense that something is unfolding. The challenge is no longer seen as a barrier, but as a part of a larger process that is guiding you forward in ways you may not yet fully understand. This shift does not remove the effort or discomfort that can accompany certain situations. There are still moments that require patience, adjustment, and resilience. What changes is the interpretation. Rather than labeling these moments as failures or setbacks, you start to recognize them as transitions. They are the spaces between where you have been and where you are going. In this way, challenges become meaningful rather than meaningless interruptions. When a problem arises, your immediate reaction often determines how it will influence you. If you meet it with resistance, frustration, or the belief that it should not be happening, the experience tends to intensify. You may feel stuck, as though progress has been halted. But when you meet the same situation with the assumption that it serves a purpose, your approach becomes more open. You begin to look for what the moment is revealing, rather than what it is taking away. This perspective invites a deeper level of engagement with your experiences. Instead of avoiding challenges or wishing them away, you move through them with a sense of direction. You ask different questions. Rather than focusing solely on the difficulty, you consider what is being adjusted, what is being clarified, and what is being prepared. In doing so, you allow the situation to contribute to your growth rather than diminish it. Over time, patterns begin to emerge. Situations that once seemed disconnected start to reveal a kind of continuity. You may notice that certain challenges led you to new opportunities, or that moments of uncertainty redirected you towards something more aligned with your intentions. What initially appeared as a detour reveals itself as a necessary part of the path. This recognition strengthens your trust in the process, making it easier to remain steady, even when the outcome is not immediately visible. There is also a subtle shift in how you carry yourself through these moments. When you no longer see challenges as obstacles, you do not approach them with the same tension or urgency. There is less pressure to force immediate solutions and more willingness to allow clarity to develop. This does not mean inaction. Rather, it means your actions are guided by a calmer, more thoughtful state. You respond instead of react, and in doing so, you often find more effective ways to move forward. In this state, patience becomes more natural. You understand that not everything needs to resolve instantly to be moving in the right direction. You become comfortable with the unfolding of events, even when they take time. This patience is not passive. It is an active trust that each step, including the difficult ones, contributes to the whole. As this way of seeing becomes more familiar, the emotional weight of challenges begins to lessen. They no longer carry the same sense of threat or finality. Instead, they feel temporary, like phases that will pass and reveal something beyond them. This understanding allows you to remain grounded, even when circumstances are complex or uncertain. Gradually, your relationship with difficulty transforms. What once discouraged you now refines you. What once caused you to doubt now encourages you to look deeper. And what once seemed like an ending often becomes the beginning of something more aligned with your direction. In this way, challenges are no longer interruptions to your journey. They are woven into it, shaping it, guiding it, and contributing to its direction. And as you continue to move forward with this understanding, you begin to experience life not as a series of obstacles to overcome, but as a process that is continually unfolding in your favor. Consistency and belief is what transforms a passing idea into a lived reality. A single moment of confidence, a brief feeling of certainty, or a temporary sense of relief can be powerful, but it is the return to that state, again and again, that gives it influence. What you visit occasionally may inspire you, but what you dwell in consistently begins to define your experience. The mind is shaped by repetition. Whatever you repeatedly accept, feel, and affirm becomes familiar, and what is familiar begins to feel true. This is why fleeting thoughts rarely create lasting change. They come and go without leaving a strong impression. But a belief that is revisited daily, held with attention, and reinforced through feeling gradually takes root. It moves from something you are trying to adopt into something you naturally embody. When you choose the mindset that everything is working out for you, the initial shift may feel subtle. You may still notice old patterns of doubt appearing, old reactions trying to surface. This is not a sign that the process is failing. It simply reflects the habits that have been formed over time. Consistency is what gently replaces these habits. Each time you return to your chosen belief, you strengthen it. Each time you redirect your thoughts, you create a new pathway. This process is not about forcing yourself into constant positivity or denying moments of uncertainty. It is about where you settle. Thoughts may arise without invitation, but you decide which ones you give your attention to, which ones you allow to linger, and which ones you return to as your foundation. Over time, this choice becomes easier. The belief you consistently practice begins to feel more natural than the one you are leaving behind. As your inner world stabilizes in this new direction, your outer experiences begin to shift in response. This does not happen through a single dramatic event, but through a series of small, often unnoticed changes. You may find yourself responding differently in situations that once triggered stress. You may make decisions with more clarity, communicate with more confidence, and notice opportunities that previously went unseen. These changes, though subtle at first, begin to accumulate. Consistency creates alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. When these elements are in harmony, your behavior becomes more coherent. You are no longer pulled in conflicting directions by doubt and belief at the same time. Instead, you move forward with a clearer sense of direction. This clarity influences the choices you make, and your choices influence the results you experience. There is also a quiet persistence that develops through consistency. When you hold a belief over time, you become less reactive to temporary appearances. If something does not immediately reflect what you expect, you are less likely to abandon your assumption. You understand that change is a process, and you allow that process to unfold without constantly questioning it. This steadiness prevents you from returning to old patterns at the first sign of delay. In many ways, consistency builds trust, not only in the belief itself, but in your ability to maintain it. Each time you return to the mindset that things are working out for you, even in small ways, you reinforce your confidence in that state. This trust becomes a stabilizing force. It allows you to remain grounded, even when external confirmation has not yet appeared. Over time, the line between practice and reality begins to blur. What you once had to remind yourself of becomes something you simply know. The belief no longer feels like an effort. It feels like a truth you carry with ease. And as this inner conviction becomes more established, your outer world begins to reflect it more clearly. You may notice that situations begin to resolve more smoothly, that interactions feel more supportive, and that outcomes align more closely with your expectations. These changes are not random. They are the natural result of a sustained inner state. Your consistent belief has influenced how you perceive, how you act, and how you engage with the world, and in doing so, it has shaped what you experience. This is why consistency holds such importance. It is not the intensity of a single moment that creates lasting change, but the quiet, repeated return to a chosen state. It is the willingness to come back to the same assumption, even when it feels subtle, even when results are not immediate, and even when old patterns attempt to reappear. Through this steady return, your belief deepens. It becomes less dependent on effort and more rooted in your identity. And from this place, change unfolds, not as something forced or chased, but as something that naturally emerges from the state you have chosen to live in. So carry this understanding with you, not as a temporary idea, but as a way of living. What you assume, what you feel, and what you consistently return to within yourself is never without effect. Life responds, often quietly and gradually, to the state you choose to occupy. If you walk through the world expecting struggle, you will find reasons to confirm it. If you move with a quiet certainty that things are working out for you, you begin to notice a different pattern unfolding. The same world, the same moments, yet a completely different experience shaped by what you have accepted as true. You do not need to control every detail or predict every outcome. It is enough to remain anchored in the feeling that everything is unfolding in your favor. Let that feeling guide your thoughts, steady your reactions, and influence your choices. Even when circumstances seem unclear, return to that inner position again and again until it becomes familiar, until it becomes natural. In time, you will find that what once required effort now feels effortless. The confidence you practice becomes your default. The calm you chose becomes your response. And the outcomes you once hoped for begin to appear as part of your normal experience. So act as if everything always works out for you. Not by force, not by pretense, but by quietly accepting it within yourself. And from that place, allow life to reflect back to you the state you have chosen to live in.